All right. Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Johan Flint, and this guy in green here is Arjan van IJzendoorn. We're software engineers at Mendix. I will be the one doing all the talking. He helped me make slides and prepare for the presentation. And in case you have really difficult questions about Mendix 2 or stuff like that, then he's the guy to help me out there. So I will be talking about how we built the page editor. Johan showed it to you in the last session. It was also demoed to you. So I will briefly show it, but I will more talk about how we built the page editor. So when I talk about the page editor, I mean this thing, the part where you see your widgets. So I don't mean the navigation panel where you see all your documents and your navigations and your icons and stuff. I don't mean the pane which is below with your consistency errors or the properties, but really just this part with all the widgets. So the first question pops in mind, why do we write a new one? We have a business modeler. We've been building it for 8 years, around something like that. It seems to work, right? I mean, you're all here, you're all using it. Well, a couple of reasons. To whom does this look familiar? Right? You model something, you deploy it, you go to your browser, and you get something totally different. It doesn't even look remotely like the page you see in the desktop modeler. This is very frustrating, especially for designers. You see suddenly all kinds of containers on there which aren't shown on the page. Your widgets look differently. So this is not what we want. What we want is this, what Johan demoed. This is literally the page in the desktop modeler, as you can see. This is how we develop the page editor, and that's how it looks in the client. Now, this is much better. Also, technology-wise, this is a lot better. This is written in web technology. That's pretty awesome because the client is written in web technology as well. The old editor is written in C#, so we have to write all the render code ourselves. But I will get to that later. So the second is pretty obvious. We want to move to the web. It's 2016. You still have to go to mendix.com, download something, and install it. That's ancient. People don't want that anymore. You want to sign in somewhere on the beach and just go off, right? And another pain point is this. So you're building your first application. Somebody told you, there's a Google Map widget there. So you look in your modeler, you see, hey, there's an app store there. You click, you find your widget, one press of a button, it's downloaded, it's on your add-ons bar. You put it on the screen, and you get a gray box. It doesn't look remotely what you want. What you want is this. But one widget, that's all right. It's not really a problem. We can read, right? But if you have 10 of these, it looks horrible. They all look identical. You have to start reading in order to know what it is. So right now, our custom widget builders cannot provide a graphical representation for their custom widgets. So that is one of the things that we want to change. We will make it possible for you to provide a beautiful interface for your custom widgets. Another limitation is that a widget is standalone, right? Like a button or a text box, but it can't be a container. You can't put anything inside your custom widget. It's a limitation that we also want to get rid of. And I just mentioned it, the current C# desktop modeler is very hard to maintain. This is a piece of code that I copy-pasted out of our code base. This is not changed. And what it does, it calculates a rectangle in which we can put text on a button. So you have a button, it has some padding because you don't want your text to be near the border. So we have to subtract that. There's an icon there, we have to take care of the size, and then what is left is the space that we can use. We were actually not interested in this. This is boring stuff. We want to render a button for you with a nice image. But we have to spend our time writing code to make calculations about how much space we can actually use. And this applies to everything in the modeler. Everything you see is hand-drawn. We calculate all the coordinates, what to put it, how long the line has to be, which color we have to use. And what we actually want to write, oh, that's the wrong button, is this. I want to have a button with an image, and this is the image, and some text. And by the way, browser, figure it out. And the problem with the other approach is because we write everything, we can't apply your styling to it. Because we don't know what kind of padding you use, your margins, your font sizes, your colors. So we would have to parse CSS, interpret that in C# in order to make it look exactly the same as in the browser. That's unfeasible. So with this, first of all, this is a lot shorter. And secondly, it's just HTML, so we can use CSS. We can just load it, and it works. So there are, of course, a ton more reasons why we want to build a new page editor, but I think you get the idea. So how do we build a new page editor? We have a page editor. It's pretty old. There are hundreds of projects out there written in it, so it must be compatible with it. We're already maintaining one page editor. We don't want to maintain two. I mean, maintaining one is already pretty hard, right? So if we maintain two of them, it becomes really expensive. And we also want to innovate faster, right? You want to do that, but we also want to do that. So if you take a look, this is a very simple page. It has a data view showing a painter, a name with a text box, and a date picker with the birth date. But what is this actually? Mendix is a model-driven platform, right? So underwater, we have a model. So we could say that this page is a graphical representation of that model. If I change something on this page, for instance, I change the order of these two widgets, then I change the model which is underneath. If I select the name and I change properties in the property grid on the right, I'm also changing the model. So the whole page editor is just a visual way for you to easily change the model. So how does the model look like then? Well, this is a JSON representation of the actual model of the text box. The model is a bit larger than this, so I cut out some parts. But a few things which are interesting. The first one is the type. It defines what kind of widget we are talking about. And it's pretty important. We will get back to that later. And the rest should be pretty familiar. These are things that you see in property grid, right? The custom class, whether or not it's editable. The label, it's a little bit more complex because you can translate it into multiple languages. It's all in the model. And this applies to all the widgets. So what is a page? Pretty simple. It's just a tree of models, nothing else. So a page has a layout, complicates things a bit, but let's just ignore layouts for a moment. So then we say, okay, we have a data view. It has the data source, which I just configured. And then it has a vertical flow. It's probably new to most of you. You would have expected that the data view has a text box and date picker directly, but it can't. At the moment, there's a restriction that all container types only have one child, except the vertical flow. So this allows us to have multiple children. And you see here, these are exactly the same models that you saw earlier, but I cut a bit away because otherwise you can't read it all. So the page is a tree of models. On the top level, you have the data view. It has one child, the vertical flow, which in turn has two children. So that's pretty awesome. We have a model. How do we get it to the client? Well, actually, the same way. We have a page.xml. You probably have seen this. If you deploy your application, you go to the deployment folder, you see a lot of pages.xml files. So it's XML, it describes the layout, it describes the contents of the pages. But interesting to see here is the data Mendix types. This is the same as the type that you saw earlier, the page $data view. And the data Mendix props here, that's actually the model. So we already had the model for many, many years, and we were sharing this with the client using the page.xml. But you see, it's riddled. It's not so pretty, right? There's a lot of stuff here where we refer to different parts in the XML file. There's actually HTML embedded in that, which is generated by the desktop modeler. The client doesn't do anything with it, it just uses it. So when the guys started to build the meta model and the SDK on it, we needed one model to rule everything, one consistent model, a single source of truth. Because we don't want that the SDK has a different model than the desktop modeler. That would become pretty scary. So we needed something prettier. So the guys made a meta model. Based on the meta model, we have the Mendix Model SDK, which has been released in Mendix 6. You can use it yourself to script, and you work with the exact same model that I just showed you. And based on that, we wrote the web modeler and also the page editor. So it's a good use case to show you that the SDK is really, really powerful. If you had the time, you could write the page editor yourself. But I said we want one source of truth, right? So what we do is, first, the desktop modeler was the only one who had all the models. So we extracted it to the meta model, and now based on the meta model, we generate C# classes for the same model again. So the meta model is leading. Also said that we don't want to maintain 2 page editors. So we wrote one. And we actually published it like a library. And the web modeler is using it directly. The web modeler fetches a model, gives it to the page editor, and says, do your stuff. That's great. But the web modeler and all the things around it are built by a different team. So how do we build it? Well, we maintain the page editor and the desktop modeler. So what we want to do is make sure that these two align, that it doesn't look the same, but that you can work with it in the same way. So what we did, we embedded Chrome, the browser, into the desktop modeler, and we just load the page editor in there. So we don't have the property bar and all that stuff because it's already there. But that is how we reuse the page editor. So let's see if I can show you that in a moment, if I can find the correct application. Yeah, there we go. So this, what you see here, is the page editor. This is exactly the same page editor that you've seen during the keynote. It's the same code. There's no difference. But there's a little magic button, which is right here. This is the page, how it looks like in the desktop modeler. This is what you're all used to. So this is how we can model stuff out. And in order to see how it looks like, we have a very magic button, which we will publish at some point in time, which switches to the page editor. So this is how we work. And if I can get back to my presentation. There we go. So now you have an idea of how the model looks like. How do you actually get the model to the page editor? Well, in the web modeler, it's pretty simple. We have the page editor, and it wants to talk to the model server. The model server has all the models in memory, and it does so by talking to an iModel API client. It's an interface which defines how we can talk to the model server. The interface is implemented already by the SDK. You don't have to do anything for it. And that one talks with the server using HX calls. And what you get back, simply JSON. Pretty much what you've seen already on the slides. But the desktop model is a bit different. We already have everything. We open your MPR, so we have the whole model in memory. So we can serialize the model to JSON. But how do we get it to the page editor? Well, I said that it was embedded in Chrome, right? And we used the Chrome embedded framework for that. And it has a very nifty feature. So what we can do is we can actually inject a C# class in there. So we get a JavaScript class, which is a proxy. If we call things on the JavaScript object, then the framework actually takes care of calling the correct C# method for us. So what we did is we talked to the same interface, but we wrote our own implementation, which is actually the proxy object. So what we do is we call methods on the API for page editor, which lives in the desktop modeler, which is written in C#. And the only thing it does is deserialize things from the model in memory. And this is only possible because of the meta model, because there is a single source of truth. These all have the same models. Once we have the model, we have to build up the page editor. I already told you that the whole page is just a tree of models. So what we do is we take a look at the model, we take a look at the type, the page $text box that you saw earlier, and we take a look in the registry. And for every type of model, we have one widget, which we call a widget editor. And we simply render it. We give it, it's part of the model, and then the thing knows how to render itself. So for instance, for a text box, it will get the model, and the model has all the properties it needs, and we can show it. Containers are a little bit different because they can contain all the widgets. Well, we just give them the sub-part of the tree, and it recursively renders. So how does the renderer look? Well, this is an example, copy-pasted from the code base. It's not modified. It's written in TypeScript. And this renders the date picker as it is. You can see it's very short. It's much easier to maintain than the C# code. And a few things here which is interesting to see. So on top, you can see in these brackets the pages.date picker. That is the type name. That's how we know what kind of model we can render here. The type name is repeated here. That's used for the registry. There's some metadata there that we use for the toolbox, so you can actually drag and drop widgets on top of your page. And this is all the code which actually renders it. This is React, and it looks pretty much like HTML. I have a div, a button, and that's pretty much it. So this is very close to HTML. Now, writing the new page editor came with its own set of challenges. Some of them we have solved. Some of them are not really solvable. It's more about making decisions and trade-offs. So what we wanted to do is to create an editor, which is what you see is what you get. So how do we do that? Well, we apply your theme and your custom styling to it, so it will look the same as in the client. But there's a problem there, because the page editor is not your client. You want to show different information. You want to see that your widget is actually selected. You want to see some metadata. So what kind of data source are you using? Which entity did you actually tie to your widget? So if we put that information in the widgets themselves, then your HTML structure will be different. And we might break your styling. So we can't do that. So we solved this. What we did is we render an overview, not in the same part of the DOM tree, but as a sibling next to it. And we position it over it. So that way we can show extra information, like you can see here, the orange box around it, saying that what you selected is a data view, and that an asset is actually tied to it. That's metadata. That is in the overview, which is not in the same DOM, same part of the DOM as the rest of it. Because we load theming and styling, you can actually break the editor. Imagine that you target the property bar and you say display none. Then it's gone. You can't change your properties anymore. We don't want that. It gets even worse. You can disable pointer events. It means that you can't click on anything anymore. So then if you click on an input box, it won't get selected. You can't move it anymore, you can't delete it anymore. That's not what we want. So we do two things to avoid this. First of all, we scope the CSS. We make it more specific. so that it only applies to the page editor. So you can't target things around it anymore. The second thing that we do is we strip out parts of the CSS. For instance, hover styles, the pointer events I mentioned, transitions, because it would be very strange if you hover over it and the button starts to animate. It makes sense for your customer, for your user, but not for the guy modeling the thing. So everything which is illegal, stripped out. You will see it in the client, it will work there, but it won't work in the page editor. So that's how we prevent custom styling from breaking the editor itself, because it's all the same technology. Now, this is the most difficult thing. This is an unsolvable problem. It's a tension area between what you see is what you get on one hand, and usability on the other hand. Now, what you see here is a layout grid with a lot of div containers. Not very useful, but it's useful to get the point across. This is very usable. You know exactly what's on the page. There are a lot of containers there. You can target and click on every container, change its properties. But that's not what you're getting, because you actually will get the thing on the left-hand side. So the buttons are not below each other, hence the vertical flow, but they're next to each other. And you can't see the containers. This also takes up a tremendous amount of space. Your designers will completely freak out if they see this. Your modelers as well, by the way. This is not the page I created. What happened here? Well, containers happened. But the thing on the right-hand side, that's what you see is what you get. But that's also probably not what you want. What if I wanted to remove the layout container? You can't. You can't see it, so you can't click on it. And same applies to all the other containers in there. So it depends on what you want to do, how we have to solve this. If you want to target the containers, then the thing on my left, your right, is maybe not so good, right? So we don't know yet how to solve this. We're talking with UX. We're trying things out. So one of the solutions might be to create an overview. So if you select the page title, that we show which container it has, and add a possibility to select that container so that you can move up or down. This is a tension field without any solution at the moment.
In several browsers like Firefox or Chrome, you do have the developer tools with a DOM inspector.
Yeah.
Is that something you're thinking about, like when you hover over it and then you'll see the containers? Something like that.
One of the ideas is to have an overlay, or more like a page outline, so that you can see the tree of all the widgets. So the layout grid, which contains a div container, which contains another div container. And if you hover over it, that then on the page you actually select it. There might be an option. But if you have as many containers as here, then the indentation will be so bad that it falls off your screen. So that's also something to think about. So I hope that by now you have a little bit of a better understanding how we build the whole thing. That the page editor is a graphical representation of the whole model. That the model is a tree of all the widgets. Based on the type, we take the widget editor, we render it, we give it part of the model, and we recursively render the whole thing. We build this by implementing this in the desktop modeler, by serializing the models a little bit differently. And we don't maintain two versions on it by simply reusing it. And in time, we will replace the complete desktop version with this version. So, thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, let me know. Yes?
Is the switch button to web mode and original edit mode has the shortcut?
No, at the moment, what you saw here is the feature that we built for ourselves.
Okay.
But it's so useful because you can actually see the whole thing without building the whole web modeler and deploying that to the cloud and everything, that we said, well, probably everybody wants to have this new modeler, so we will enable this, but maybe not in the current form, because this is just convenience. So maybe the button will be in a different place, it will look different, we might add a shortcut key to it, but at the moment, it's not. There's also developer tools, which you probably saw in there, which we, of course, use to figure out how everything is rendered. We don't know if we make this available or not. Depends on your needs. Sorry?
And conditional visibility is also a challenge, I guess.
Yeah, that's another good challenge. I had to pick a number, of course, but it is a big challenge, because what are you going to show? If it's hidden and we're not showing it, then, well, you don't know it's there. And if you say, like, OK, it's based on the roles, we have 3 roles, so you can select a role, and then based on select a role, we show you the view that you have then. Sounds like a good solution, until you realize that our customers have like 20 roles out there. Doesn't scale. So we're not out there completely. We're still thinking about the best way of doing things. So it might be that in the first beta, things will be suboptimal, because we think that it works like this, and that people will like it, but maybe you won't. So that's why we have a beta, to iterate over it, to change things based on user input. But that's a very big challenge. I think probably one of the biggest ones.
Thanks.
One of the parts that now is not used that much, the document template, has some legacy options, let's say, they're not so useful anymore. Would it be possible to change this also for the document template? Because, yeah, it's already now HTML. I only have to say it's an A4 page, and then I'm good to go. It would be the ideal solution to get rid of that part and change it for this.
Yes.
Excellent idea.
It's I couldn't have said it better. It's a very good idea. It's not something that we're thinking about at the moment. I mean, the page header itself, it's a huge, huge thing. It has many, many options. So the first step will be to actually finish everything, port all the features to it, iterate over it, so it's really the thing that you want to play with, want to work with. And then we have to continue and work on the rest of the product, like microflows, like document templates. There's a lot of work to be done there.
It would be so lovely if that one would be checked out and then changed to this.
Yeah, it's definitely something we played with. On one of the crafting days, I tried converting document templates to ordinary pages by just adding some widget types. And then this came along, and I thought, no, we should wait until we have this, and then replace it with a real HTML editor. So definitely...
Is there a feedback button there in the web?
At the moment, there is not. Yeah. You could build the whole thing yourself using the SDK. That's what we did. So, yes.
Will you be adding the dynamic CSS class feature?
We're still playing with that. So at the moment, it's very powerful because you can just type in arbitrary CSS, which is nice for people who actually know it. But to make it easier, it's better to have predefined styles that are used everywhere. So that's the route we're taking at the moment. And we will see if it will work.
Yeah, the thing is, you always have, when you're designing your page, and you, in one moment in time, you always have the need for a dynamic class feature on a specific component. Because currently you only have the visibility option, right, to put something on or off. And if you want to have the different styles, you need to lay the same property again and again to apply different styles. So a feature to add a style class to a certain attribute or component, that's something we really like.
Are you talking about the class property or the style property?
Yeah, talking about class properties.
Okay, because that is fully functional in the desktop modeler, and in the web modeler, there's an approach where you have a design drop-down with limited
You currently you can type in the class, right?
Yeah.
That is my own class. What is going to have this class be dynamic from, let's say, a specific model state?
Ah, that's what you mean.
Okay, that's a new feature.
Right.
Ah.
Well, it's a
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, so the feature request is that based on the type of model, we can actually dynamically add a CSS class to it. And the answer is, at the moment, no. No plans for it, but it's a very good idea. So maybe if Mitja is bored, then he can build it in his spare time. But yeah, it's a good idea. But inline styles is definitely not something that we want to support. It's very hard to maintain, and we really want to get rid of it. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you.